Hello, this is chapter 16 and 17 theory summaries, and I'm Darlene. So we'll start with chapter 16, where we discuss the coordinated um, management of meeting CMM summary. Um, the coordinated management of meeting theory was developed by Barnett Pierce, in which we met in the videos. Back in the 80s, 70s, 80s. CMM for short is really different from some of the other theories, from the other communication theories that we have read about. As in, CMM is not necessarily trying to predict or assume the outcome or behavior of a person, um, or find like a one key detail or one key truth. It Instead of that, it gives us a way to think about communication is something that we can create um, in, separately in every conversation. So some of the key phrases were like person in person conversation, where the use of hyphens, um, because they can clearly show that we're discussing one particular unit, not separating, or we're not like separate individuals trying to exchange messages, but instead we are almost one. We're meeting together. We're creating our own definition or our own reality together instead of separate views. A main assumption of C&M is that we're always telling stories about what a person is doing, who we are, where we're going, what's important. But the thing that's going to always be a gap between the stories that we tell and the stories that we live is one is in language, like how we talk, how we speak to each other, how we are, something that might be specific to our cultures, things like that. And the other pretty much depends on your body language. So if you're maybe not as engaged, you might have less vocal contact. Or if you are tired, you might be, you know, the limp body, as my mom would call it. But you can never really kind of get it to match what it is as us as human beings, if that makes sense. Um, CNM also tells us that we should not be looking for um, a definitive stories that we can cooperate as, oh, this is a true story. It has to have some type of objective to it. But instead, once again, like I mentioned earlier, we should be more focused on creating that moment, creating those certain conversations, and what light we would like shed on them. Like if someone says this is true, they're not stating a fact, they're just doing the work and just saying, this is true, um, for what their understanding is, what they have created initially inside of their brains, inside of their dialect, how they're carrying, how they're speaking, that is creating the reality at that moment. Um, we talked from the video, I was listening about the cosmopolitan communication, and basically is that we have those constructive conversations even with people that we may not agree with, like if it's someone that maybe has different principles than yourself. It's really about the understanding that you can reach as um that dyadic communication. What agreement can we reach to? What can we create from our understandings in this moment during, our interaction with each other? Um, so a real life example that I can think of is not to bring too many politics into the conversation, but my sister and I have very different political views. A couple of years ago, we were at a family dinner, and you know, politics came up. It's not really a table conversation, but it's family. We tend to think that we can, talk or joke about anything together. So as we started kind of getting really tense with each other, then it almost turned into an argument, and it escalated very fast, faster than we wanted it to, and definitely faster than my mom, our mother, wanted it to. She was, even though we are adults, she was getting kind of cranky with us. But my view has changed from that argument since reading about C&M, and where I told myself to pay attention to what we were creating in that moment, not necessarily what we were arguing about, or what, the external view of that interaction was, but really what are we creating in that moment. Um, Anytime my sister would make a statement about, you, whatever political affiliation you agree with, um, it felt more in depth than just disagreeing about policies or, new laws or things like that. So, and I looked at it, in hindsight, I tried a different approach to think about that situation to help me understand. And from reading about C&M, I do believe that, if I'm ever in that situation where I am having a disagreement with someone in that particular moment, that I would truly take a step back and remember that, you know, it's just us disagreeing. If we ever have to talk about politics again, instead of jumping to my viewpoint or, something to counterpoint what her thoughts or views were, I can look at that moment and say, you know, help me understand why this matters to you. Help me understand your viewpoint. Help create that reality for me so I can have a better understanding of why you may disagree with that particular issue to start with. And in that moment, I do feel like that conversation would not escalate by owning that moment and creating that reality for my sister and I, individualized conversation that we might have different views on. Just understanding or even asking her, help, show me what you are expressing, why you feel, so strongly about this. And ultimately, I do believe that can resolve a lot of conflict or even prevent a lot of conflict. So that was some chapter, that was the CMM. So switching over to communication privacy management theory, CPM for short. It was the author, and we actually met her in the video as well, Sandra Petronio. This theory started in the 90s and continued to shape and have more meaning or more definition behind it around the 2000s. So the basic idea of communication privacy management theory is that all of our private information that we hold dear to us, or private, it is something that we own. We control it. We control the narrative. We control what we put into it. It's our thoughts, it's our processes, it's our information. It is something that is almost as specific to you as your fingerprint. Is you own it. So Petronio used like different methods and metaphors to really drive the point of privacy boundaries home. Like, imagine if you're a wall around your information, and depending on who the person is, what the person is doing, whatever the situation is, the wall can be super, super thick. I'm talking like, bulletproof, nothing's getting through there. Or the wall can be thin and permeable, that it can be easily penetratable. If that wall is thin, that voice will travel through, and you're not exactly having as much privacy as you would like. So picture your private information like that box. When we decide to share that private information, we are essentially inviting co-owners to our information. If I decide to share something personal between my husband and I with a classmate, then I am essentially giving my classmate credentials to that, privy to that personal information that belongs to me. And that person becomes almost like a co-owner, able to decide what they're going to do with the information. So the co-owners, she did say, she kind of back, like not necessarily a co-owner, but you're over this information, like an overseer, a guardian, might have been the word that she used. Yeah, like a guardian of the information. Even though you own it, by giving someone else ownership of it, they don't necessarily have to not share your information, because you gave it to them, and at that point it becomes theirs to do what they choose to do. And this was not in the chapter, but this definitely goes back into ethical reasons. So if you're sharing personal information, make sure it's someone that practice great ethics. um so a few assumptions from the theory is that people believe they have the right to control their private information because it's your private information. Secondly, that when we share information, we develop privacy rules, or we might give a preface like, oh, please don't tell anyone this, or please don't share this with anyone. And sometimes we just assume that the person knows what, so sorry, knows what the turbulence, for what Petronio used, the turbulence may be. And then there's a difference between when the turbulence and, between the turbulence and a complete breakdown of that communication. The turbulence is like in your airplane. We have turbulence on the plane, but we still have an opportunity to continue that flight smoothly. That turbulence will not persist. It will not last. We can fix it. But if something is completely broken down, that is nothing that we can fix. A complete breakdown is a full invasion of your privacy, and it empties out your credit. I keep flipping the video. It empties out your credit points, and once that is completely empty, it's very hard to refill it. So, a real life example: my husband and I have been married for we've been together for over a decade. And early in our marriage, I shared, very personal things about my family members with him. Um, Something that I probably would not have shared anyone else, but since it was my husband, I decided, I can talk to him. I didn't really say don't tell anyone the information. I kind of made an assumption, and when you assume, what happens. I kind of made an assumption that it would be personal information, that, it wouldn't be shared with anyone. Like, I didn't feel the need to have to say, don't tell anyone. But unfortunately, that information was shared with someone outside of my family. And when we were, and I didn't know at the moment, but months and months later, when we were, I can't remember exactly what we're doing at the moment, but might have been in the mall together, myself and my in-laws, and maybe one of my family members as well. And I heard my in-laws bring this particular topic up that I know I had shared with him, and I was a little bit taken back, and I was nervous that, because I didn't want anything to be a big deal. I didn't want anyone to feel like I had broken their trust. So I was a little bit alarmed by it. I mean, but it was turbulence. Therefore, it was something that could be fixed. And we fixed it by having a whole conversation about this, and, a little bit of explanation. And then, we kind of jokingly, said that, okay, now going forward, we will make sure that we kind of preface our conversations by saying, hey, this is just between us, right? So, and I do the same thing with him now. So, that is something that we practice to this day. But it didn't turn out to be a complete breakdown. So, it was definitely something that we were able to repair and fix. And it didn't cause any, it didn't cause any hurt or harm to anyone. So this video went a little bit longer than I wanted to. The chapters were kind of engaging this week, and I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you.